Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Alaimi Fadansi, and my partners' names are Courtney King, Robert Ashworth, and Ashley Stewart. Today, we will be discussing the direct and indirect peer pressure and its effect on students' opinion about cheating. Okay. Before I explain our experiment, I am going to explain to you all some literature support about peer pressure and its effect on academic cheating. A study by O'Rourke et al. In 2010 posits that seeing other peers in the act of cheating triggers a moral dilemma in determining whether or not to conform to the behavior of academic cheating themselves. And they found that peer pressure is a strong predictor of cheating than personal values. Carol Mastrom M. West found a strong correlation in seeing other students and an influence of increase in the other students that perceives it, meaning that peer pressure is a strong indicator. Peer pressure is proven to be the best indicator for academic cheating. McGabe and Trevino, 1996, researched several factors that could affect academic cheating, and they found peer pressure to have the strongest impact of cheating behavior. Why is this important? It is important to understand the effects of peer pressure because peer pressure invokes the belief of if everyone does it, why not engage? It makes it feel like it's not such a big deal. The belief that because it is a norm, it is okay. Understanding that students feel this way is very important so that we can promote a discussion and research on finding ways in which the norm can be changed, which would lead to more integrity in all of us as a society. Now, I will explain our research question. Our research question goes as follows. The fact that the knowledge of peer pressure, whether indirect and direct, has on college student cheating. Our independent variable is the form of peer pressure, and our dependent variable are the levels of temptation and wrongness. We predict and hypothesize that direct peer pressure will result in more acceptance towards cheating, while indirect peer pressure will show less positive attitudes towards cheating.
I'm now going to go ahead and discuss the methods of our research, which includes participants, the materials that we used, as well as the design and procedure of this experiment. So to begin, our participants were recruited through social media sites like Facebook and Reddit, as well as a participant pool at Mary Washington. In total, we had 88 volunteers, and their demographics are shown here. Majority of our participants were teenagers and freshmen in college. The materials that we used included a peer pressure vignette, a temptation to cheat scale, and a wrongness scale. The peer pressure vignette was our independent variable, which describes a student named Alex in a school setting who is taking an exam. There was 3 variations of this vignette in which Alex experienced one of 3 types of peer pressure. These types were no peer pressure, in which Alex does not see any of his classmates cheating, a direct peer pressure situation in which Alex's friend asks him to cheat during the exam, and then an indirect peer pressure situation in which Alex sees his classmate cheating during the exam but is not being directly asked to help cheat. Next, we had the temptation to cheat scale, which asked about Alex's temptation to cheat during the situation, how likely he would be to copy someone's answers, give answers to someone else, etc. And this was also asked in the perspective of the participant and how likely they would be to engage in those situations if they were in Alex's position. And next, we created a wrongness scale in which the participant rated the moral and ethical wrongness of multiple different types of cheating situations, like using a cell phone or other unauthorized materials during an exam. So our study ended up being a 1-by-3 between groups design with the one independent variable with the 3 types of peer pressure, and then 3 dependent variables, which are Alex's temptation, the participant's temptation, and moral and ethical wrongness. So to describe what our participants went through, they were first presented with one of the 3 types of the vignettes, and then they answered questions about Alex's temptation, personal temptation, and lastly, the moral and ethical wrongness of cheating situations.
A MANOVA was conducted to examine the effect of the type of peer pressure, direct, indirect, or none, on participants' rating of a hypothetical student Alex's temptation to engage in cheating behaviors, the participant's temptation to engage in those same cheating behaviors, and the participants' opinions of how wrong those behaviors are. The results of the MANOVA indicated that the peer pressure condition did not affect the rating of the participant's own temptation or the participants' rating of how wrong those behaviors were. The peer pressure condition did, however, have an effect on how the participants rated Alex's temptation. On average, although there was not a significant effect from the peer pressure condition, the participants did rate the wrongness of the cheating behaviors significantly higher than Alex's temptation or the participant's temptation. The graph represents the mean scores of the dependent variable across the 3 levels of the independent variable. A post-hoc Tukey test was conducted to examine which peer pressure condition had the most significant effect on the dependent variable named Alex's temptation. The results of the Tukey test indicated that the control condition, with a mean score of 1.556, rated Alex's temptation significantly lower than the direct condition, with a mean score of 2.103, and the indirect condition, with a mean score of 2.230. The graph represents the mean scores of Alex's temptation across the 3 different peer pressure conditions. A repeated measures ANOVA was conducted to compare the mean scores of the dependent variable named participant's temptation with Alex's temptation. The results of the ANOVA indicated that the participants rated Alex's temptation with a mean score of 1.958, significantly higher than their own temptation with a mean score of 1.572. The results of the ANOVA also indicated that the peer pressure condition the participants were in did not significantly affect Alex's temptation and the participant's temptation when compared together. The graph represents the mean scores for Alex's temptation and the participant temptation across the different peer pressure conditions.
So, what this all means is that we initially hypothesized that direct peer pressure would result in more acceptance towards cheating behaviors, and indirect peer pressure would result in less acceptance towards cheating behaviors. We were unable to prove a correlation between direct and indirect peer pressure and its effect on acceptance towards cheating. However, while our hypothesis was not supported, this does not mean peer pressure isn't a factor for the acceptance of cheating behaviors. Results from our study showed that peer pressure overall had an effect on temptation outside of the different conditions in which participants were in. Also, for temptation, results showed that temptation for the student in the hypothetical scenario was higher when presented with direct peer pressure rather than the control group. Lastly, participants rated the wrongness higher than the student in the scenario's temptation and the participant's temptation. Our findings tie into what past research has found, that peer pressure has a significant effect on temptation for cheating, regardless of the way in which it was presented. Educators should still understand the different types of peer pressure to prevent scenarios in which they can occur. Some limitations to our study that could have changed our results are: 1, this study was done in an online setting via a survey where the hypothetical scenarios were given to participants, and 2, participants could have seen our hypothetical scenarios as unrealistic. Responses to the survey could have been inaccurately answered if participants believed the hypothetical scenarios were uncommon or unrelatable. We believe that if this study was done in person in a classroom setting, actually displaying the different conditions given in the vignettes, that participants may have responded differently. Future researchers should consider incorporating more than one scenario for both direct and indirect peer pressure to give participants more scenarios in which they could see as realistic. Also, performing this study in an actual classroom setting versus using vignettes may produce different results.